Really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
But I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. As always, my name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm on Blue Sky @ofscrum, and you can always drop me an email at thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, it was another eye-popping weekend, so why don't we get this thing on the road? So there wasn't really anything on the home front to report this week, and I didn't really come across any positive or interesting bits of news. So for the sake of time, we're going to skip those segments and head right into our reviews. And of course, there was only one grand final on this weekend. So we're going to start with that. Super Rugby Aupiki featured the Blues, the reigning champions, hosting Matatu, the first final in Aupiki history not to include the Chiefs Manawa. It was an incredible game with Ruahei Demant featuring prominently as always. She scored the first try, and it was her conversion that put them up for good. Matatu actually led 14-9 after 55 minutes, but guess who? Portia Woodman-Wycliffe scored a try right on the cusp of the final quarter, with Demant's kick making it 21-19, and Matatu looked like they felt they knew what was coming. The visitors couldn't find a way through that Blues defense the rest of the way, and Sorensen McGee's try on the 70th minute extinguished their chances on the season. 26-19 was your final score. The Blues becoming the first team to win the title twice and the first to do it back-to-back as well. It's been a brief but incredible season for Aupiki. I wish it was coming back next week. It's just such a great ride. And finally, you knew it was coming, had to include it for one last time this year. Got to end with the recurring plea, Portia, please, for the love of all gods, don't retire. Anyway, back up north in the Six Nations, I wanted to cover this next. It seems like it's the most quote unquote important thing happening. Despite my own trepidation about this tournament, if you don't know what I'm talking about, do yourself a favor. Check out the most recent episodes of the Scottish Rugby podcast, where I was thrilled to be a guest this week. It will all become clear, and I'm sure you'll get where I'm coming from. Anyway, this week, as we've been doing, we're going to continue to consolidate. We're going to do a game of the week with each comp we're covering, and then go sort of mostly scores only. I just need to tighten things up a little bit. It's been a lot. So in this case, that means our game of the week was actually the final fixture of the round. On Sunday, it was Scotland versus Italy, where good friend John Anderson was on hand for the spectacle. John, really appreciate all the photos you sent. And by the way, any listeners at all who get out to any matches, send along pics. I love seeing all the different venues around the world. Either way, it looked like everything about the day was absolutely lovely, except for that one little teeny tiny matter of the actual result. I'd come into this one with really high hopes, so it was a disappointing performance by Scotland, though I want to be fair and give credit to Italy. They showed a lot of grit and were clearly the better team on the day. Scotland managed just 3 tries to Italy's 5, but the visitors can't be particularly happy about missing every single conversion. The oddest stat, perhaps, was meters gained, where Italy outgained their hosts by more than 2-1. It was a shocking 280 to, wait for it, 624. But I mean, let's face it, if you were watching those numbers, sadly, it makes sense. Ora Mutso, she got herself a brace, including the one that nailed the lid shut on the 77th minute. A very tough day for Scotland fans. So the day before that fixture, actually, was our next game. It was France versus Wales. Not as lopsided as I would have guessed. France winning 4 tries to 2, making it 42-12 in Brive. Seems like I feel like I suddenly have those numbers wrong, but that's what it said. Anyway, we finished off the round with Ireland versus England. Not going to pretend I watched this one. It didn't take a psychic to know how this one was going to go. The Red Roses winning inevitably 5-49. So this means after 3 rounds, England and France are still undefeated with 15 and 14 table points respectively. Ireland and Italy are locked at 5 points, with with Ireland holding the edge thanks to a points differential. And then at the bottom, Scotland and Wales with only 1 win between them and combining for as many table points as Ireland or Italy. Scotland have to go to Welford Road to face the Red Roses this coming weekend. And then they finish out against Ireland, while Wales have Ireland, then Italy. It could well be that final fixture frees them from the wooden spoon. And why am I even talking about this tournament? has been tough for sure. I mean, unless you're an English fan, and in which case you must be so bored. Anyway, that brings us over to the European Cups. We had the quarterfinals action. I was very excited. As a change, though, we're starting with the Challenge Cup, where we had Connacht versus Racing for our game of the week. Connacht, they started hot. Racing gave away a red card and a penalty. Started to look grim for them. From the start, Bundyaki looked like he was on a mission, and Mac Hansen looked like he'd eaten his Wheaties that morning as well. Wait, is there an Australian equivalent for Wheaties? Oh, it's probably just Wheaties. Oh, maybe it's like Wheateros or something, right? Anyway, naturally, despite being down a player and being generally bobbins, Racing just wouldn't go away. It was a nerve-wracking 28-24 on the intermission. By the way, Connacht had already lost one of their starting players, and then Josh Ioane came in and hurt his shoulder almost immediately. So there were literally no more backs on the bench as the second half got underway. With a half hour to go, Racing took their first lead, and when Owen Farrell slotted a drop goal soon after, I took a long, sad look at the old game over stamp. Sure enough, up 15 players to 13 by the end, we still couldn't put it away. The Parisians easily kicked it out to wrap up a crazy 40-43 win. What a disappointment for Connacht and, frankly, for me. Anyway, next up, Edinburgh versus Bulls. That made it 2 weeks in a row that a South African team had come to the Hive and ended up making Edinburgh look pretty good, at least in the first half where it was 24-7. As you'd expect, things got pretty tight late. With under 2 minutes to go, the Bulls were making a strong drive, knocking on the door, down just 6, with an extra player on the pitch right at the death. However, Pierre Schoeman getting a game-saving turnover. Edinburgh would advance to the semi-finals 34-28. Wow. Ospreys versus Lyon saw the home team playing catch-up all day long, but they were within 2 points with under 10 minutes to go. A missed penalty would spell their doom in the end, a frustrating ending for a promising campaign for the only remaining Welsh team in Europe, 18-20 in Swansea. And then finally, we had Bath at home for Gloucester. It took some serious head-scratching for me to understand why only 5 points in the pool stages got to host 7 points in the pool stages. But I eventually got there, and it turned out the real issue was just being an idiot. Either way, right at the top, the comms were saying how they expected another really, really close match, and that was exactly the opposite of how I felt. But then again, nobody pays me to do this, so I kind of hoped that they were going to be right. As it unfolded, there was so little defense being played that Super Rugby teams were overheard saying, they don't seem to be taking this very seriously. And, while it's certainly fun to watch, I have serious doubts that Bath can win a title without playing a lick of D. You just can't always rely on being the last ones to hold the ball. As I had suspected, Bath started to run away with it 33-19 at halftime, and by full time, it was 61-26. At the start of this bit, by the way, I mentioned the comms predicted a really tight contest while I predicted a smackdown. So the only remaining question is, where's my money? Anyway, meanwhile, I'm sure more people would be interested in the Heineken Cup. Another incredible round, by the way, where our obvious game of the week was UBB versus Munster. It was exactly the spectacle you'd have imagined going to a game in Bordeaux. It has to be right at the very top of my bucket list. What an atmosphere and what a team. It took Damien Penaud all of 5 minutes to get that first try, but Munster, they had shown up with a ferocity that looked promising for them. As always, there was a throng of Munster supporters on hand. They were not above some heckling and taunting early on, but I'll tell you, that had pretty much stopped by the end of the first quarter. Munster managed to get a try a few minutes past the halftime buzzer, making it 29-10 to start the second stanza. UBB started giving away penalties. Munster were happy to take advantage, clawing their way back in the game. And considering what a blowout it had been, I was getting a bit nervous. I've seen this movie before, and it's not fun. It became the battle of the yellow cards, and UBB had to close it out with 13 players against 15, but close it out they did, eventually winning a game that had no business making me this nervous. 47-29. The Munster lineout is an absolute dumpster fire right now. What is going on with that? Anyway, elsewhere, we had Leinster versus Glasgow. It was as boring as you would have guessed, or at least I would have. Leinster pouring in tries all day long, and Glasgow unable to do much of anything. I realized as I was watching how annoyed I am that Geordie is still there. Like, I thought he was signed up for a brief period that would cover Six Nations, but Here he is, making the concepts of parity or salary cap look absurd, while his Hurricanes are significantly worse without him. Yeah, great, super fun. Leinster led 33-0 at halftime, and the nightmare had only begun. Down 47-0, Glasgow had to watch Matt Fagerson leave the field on the meat wagon. That makes 2 Fagersons in 2 weeks, and Glasgow went down only slightly less humiliatingly than the Harlequins had last week, 52-0. Yowza. Northampton, they were slow to get started against Claremont, but they found the gas, and a try right on halftime saw them take a 27-10 lead into the break. 40 minutes later, 7 tries total saw them winning big 46-24. Then on Sunday, Toulon versus Toulouse. This certainly would have been the game of the week if not for my Border Beagles, but I have to start with a little complaint here, and it actually wasn't Blow Rugby's fault for a change. The producers absolutely screwed the pooch at the start of this match by leaving the audience audio on mute during the Pilu Pilu. Like, what's the best thing about a match in Toulon? The lead up, the singing, the chants, the back and forth of the Pilu Pilu, the bands. And here we could hear a slight whisper from that maniac that they have leading the thing, and the comms literally said, "Just listen to that crowd," followed by 20 seconds of complete silence. Worst job I've seen in terms of broadcast in either EPCR Cup this year. To be fair, they did fix it once it didn't really matter anymore. Anyway, the game was as tight as you'd expect. The home side up just 6-3 after the visitors survived a yellow card. At one point, they gave us a great shot of Dan Bigger screaming at a pimple-faced teenager who was working at the hot dog stand, but I mean, I might have imagined it. Anyway, it was all kicking in the first half, Toulon leading 12-6, but it was Toulouse getting the first try, Ramos unable to convert. Not his day off the boot, at least until that point. Okay, I'll admit it. This probably should have been the game of the week. In the final quarter, we were all square at 18 apiece. What a game. An unbelievable ending with Mr. Miss himself. I was calling him Ramos. All the pressure on his shoulders. A kick from a weird angle to potentially put it away as the clock died a slow death, and arcing, turning, it came back through. Presto. Game over. Toulouse effectively stealing one at the death from a team that doesn't lose at home and had been in the ascendancy almost all day at full time to close out the quarterfinals. It was the monster, Toulouse, getting through 18-21 in an instant. Classic. What a game. Okay, that's enough of the European nonsense for now. That brings us down to the South Pacific for Super Rugby Pacific, and it was full on for round 9. Your game of the week was Waratahs versus Chiefs from New South Wales. I was worried that it might be a blowout, but it was a must win for the Taz. I admit, little mini side note, I am fully on board the Joseph Sua'ali'i hype wagon. Oh boy, did he deliver today. Meanwhile, it was Sean Stevenson's 100th Super Rugby cap 1 week after nabbing his 50th for the Chiefs. How's that for consistency? The home team were up 14-0 after a half hour, despite having 2 tries waved off, the second of which pretty obviously should have stood. In fact, you all know I don't like to do this, but Angus Maybe had a horror show of a day on the whistle. He got that one badly wrong. He was missing penalties left and right, but the big one was when Sua'ali'i, he took a shoulder directly to his chin. Gideon Rampling had, I thought, pretty clearly and cynically targeted his head, even moved up to do it, made an NFL-style human projectile piercing move to smash him in the face. Sua'ali'i kind of stopped dead, looked dazed, but Angus Maybe decided, just a yellow card. A preposterous decision made more so by the TMO somehow agreeing with him and deciding not to upgrade it. And B, he didn't send off Sua'ali'i for an HIA. So as I mentioned, I was just a guest on the Scottish Rugby podcast for Our Hands in the Ruck. This was exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly the kind of thing. It's nonsense. It's starting to make me a little sick. Angus Maybe and whoever the TMO was, they need to be removed from officiating until they agree to take player welfare seriously. It was an egregious, really kind of disgusting display. Okay, rant over. Anyway, we came to the final moments. The Waratahs, they were holding on to a 21-14 advantage. It took them until almost the 86th minute to finally put it away. A huge win for the Aussie team and a bit of a head scratcher for the Chiefs. Damien McKenzie had a really, really bad day at the office. And my theory is so much of what they do flows through him that if he can't be relied on a given day, the team kind of crumbles, they kind of fall apart. A worrying sign, perhaps, for later on in the year. So meanwhile, It was also time for Hurricanes. The Hurricanes trailed the Crusaders 10-24 at halftime, and the Canes, they're their own worst enemy right now, much like the POA. At the moment, they might need to spray on some glue or something to keep holding on to the ball. Like, it's a bit of a mess. Crusaders, they were able to survive being down 2 players and got out of Sky Stadium with an important win, 24-31. Bowden Barrett was again starting at fly half for the Blues as they took on a surprising Moana Pacifica team at Eden Park. A smashing day, an incredible atmosphere. What a day. Barrett, as we started, he only needed 7 points to surpass Mornay Stain for the second most points in Super Rugby history. And I had a feeling he was going to Michaela break that record today. See what I did there? Anyway, Blues, they looked dominant, though Bodie was making it harder on himself by missing conversions. The visitors spent the first half largely on their heels. Mark Talea, who somehow had only scored 2 tries this season, he got his third nigh on halftime. Side note, the conversion that followed was the record breaker. Barrett now squarely in second place for scoring in Super Rugby all time. Want to guess how far that puts him off the mark for besting Dan Carter's record? Answer at the end of this segment. So it was 24-5 at halftime. In the second half, I had the sudden realization that I've never really talked about Hoskins Satutu in this space. Like, the guy's an absolute monster, a massive difference maker. He had another surreally excellent game. It always looks like he's just from a different planet. Of course, his try, and this one was the least of his multitudinous highlights. Hoskins Satutu, so good. 36-17 was the convincing final score in this one. My Highlanders, they were back at the Forsyth Bar to take on the Fijian Drua. Big news for me was Taniela Filimona getting his first start for the Highlanders. He's a former Free Jack who went over to the NPC and finally won himself a place at the super level, but this was his first time getting his name on that 15. So great to see him and getting that start. Always loved the guy. Good job, Taniela. 17-3 was the halftime score, a classic opportunity for my guys to just quit and watch it all slip away. But I don't know. Something was different this week. Maybe it was Taniela. They actually remembered to play in that second half. When it was 24-20, I felt sure they were going to lose it, but somehow we pulled it out with some incredible play, especially late, really piling it on. By the end, the Drua's struggles on the road would continue 43-20 after an insult to injury try by Sam Gilbert with the clock already gone red. Meanwhile, over in Queensland, I was very excited for Reds versus Brumbies, a match that would likely tell us a lot about the state of the Aussie sides. It was Tate McDermott's 100th appearance for the Reds. That seems amazing to me. And, if I said I was very excited for this one, I would be massively lowballing it. The Reds scored first, and I swear, it was as if there were 4 manifestations of Lukan Salakaya-Loto out there. He could just appear, like wherever and whenever they need him. Boom, boom. How many Lukans were there? I'm not even sure. He's like a ghost who can smash you into dust. Of course, turned into an absolute cracker for a good while. A Brumbies try right on the 40-minute whistle made it a juicy 14-21. Brumbies kind of bullied them after that, though, however. And the Reds, I don't know, they're looking a bit off. It was 26-39 at full time, and I admit I may have overestimated the Reds by some ways this year. So now that Bowden Barrett is in second place for all-time scores in Super Rugby, how far is he from the number 1 spot? Well, as of today, he's only 216 points away from the immortal heights of Dan Carter. And you know what? When I started writing this little bit, I was intending for it to highlight how ridiculous the gap is and how out of the question it would be for him to beat it. Now all I can think is, 2 more seasons and he's got it. Anyway, swinging all the way back to the United States, here at home, we had some more great action in the WER. There were only 2 fixtures this weekend. Side note, it may be obvious, I'm in love with this league. They're like the opposite of the WRU. Like, every decision they make is the right one. And the crowds, they're coming out. It's been amazing. So many positive signs. Like, we're seeing some great rugby and all signs are pointing upwards. Anyway, Denver Onyx versus Chicago Tempest served warning to the rest of us that Denver are very much for real. Chicago, they look like they've got a long season in front of them. They just haven't been up to it so far, at least. It was another blowout. The Onyx winning by a whopping 76-7. Yikes. Back in, New Jersey or whatever, the New York Exiles lost to the Bay Breakers 19-39, leaving them at a lovely 1-3 on the season. I think that is great. More of that from the New York team, please. Anyway, finally, over here in Quincy, it was my Free Jacks in the MLR. The game of the week was obviously the Free Jacks home for San Diego. The Legion had never had the nerve to come face us at home in their history. And they, you know what, might have regretted that decision by the time it was over, as they got roundly thrashed in the miserable conditions here, 39-12. That makes a 3-game win streak for the Free Jacks, and it was a sweet one. When I woke up that morning and looked out and saw a blanket of snow and sub-freezing temperatures, I thought, Southern California, you may have picked the wrong day to come to New England. And of course, as Phil Harris likes to say, it feels good to be good. Anyway, going around the horn, NOLA smashed DC 51-29. Miami somehow upended the Houston Thundercats 31-22. Really good showing by them, and they're really doing some frighteningly good stuff. The Bell Ends of Los Angeles lost heavily at home to Utah 28-45. And then finally, Chicago got back to their very, very winning ways against a winless and stupidly named Anthem 28-20. Quick update, that means that in the East, the top 3 teams are currently Chicago, New England, and DC, while out West it's Houston, Utah, and San Diego. And the slide by the Legion this year, been a bit shocking. By the music, you'll know it's time for this week's Diamond in the Ruck Award. This week, the award goes to Ruhe Demand. Ms. Demand, you were the glue that kept everything together for your Blues this season, leading the way to consecutive championships and making history along the way. You might not get all the attention heaped upon players like Portia, but you have been and are the heart of this club. Ruhe Demand, congratulations to you, for you are this week's Diamond in the Ruck. Well done. Okay, that brings us to our updates and previews. Once again, we have a ton of action coming our way here at home. My Free Jacks have their super weird Tuesday night game in the MLR, along with a full rest of the slate, by the way. Really curious to see what kind of crowd comes out on Tuesday. Could be kind of weak sauce. Anyway, in the WER, there's only the one fixture on the slate. My Banshees back at home for the New Jersey whatchamacallits. The European action is on ice until May, which means the URC is back in full swing, as is the Premiership and the top 14. Meanwhile, we're on to round 10 in Super Rugby Pacific, and I already miss Aupiki. Six Nations rolls on as well, so it is a mouth-watering slate once again this weekend. If you find yourself thinking at any time this week, I'm bored, you know what? That's on you. Well, my friends, that does it for another week, and I wanted to end with a request. So I'm planning a special bonus episode that I want to be like a sort of beginner's guide to rugby for Americans. So if you live outside of the U.S., what do you think Americans don't understand about the game? What would you want to explain to them? If you are an American, what's your own sense or experience with this question? What did you find it hard to understand at the start? Like, what do you wish someone had explained to you earlier? In either case, if you have thoughts, please send me a voice message. You can always use the scrumoftheearth@gmail.com. My intent is that I can sort of turn these bits into clips that I can then address or answer for the show. I'm incredibly curious what you all, and of course, by the way, it's just always nice to hear from the listeners. So to all of you, cheers. Talk to you soon, and be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, neat.
You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?
I wish I could get up at 11:30 every morning after being out all night God knows where.